You're listening to the Savvy Social Podcast, the show for budding entrepreneurs who want to understand the how and the why of social media marketing. I'm your host, Andrea Jones. Let's get started. Hey, welcome to episode number 15 of the Savvy Social Podcast. So excited to have you here today. I'm talking with Rachel from RS Creative&amp, and we're going to chat about the importance of building a lasting brand. Now, Rachel is a freelance creative consultant and designer. She helps small businesses and entrepreneurs develop all of their marketing creative. And when I say all, I mean all. She does logos, brand personality, print material, consumer product packaging. She's basically the one-point creative content for everything your brand touches. Rachel's from Cincinnati, Ohio, but she now lives in upstate New York. She spends her days developing brand creative and extending her clients' visual voice across all marketing platforms. Now, before I dive into today's interview, just a quick reminder to join us inside of the free Facebook group. It's called the Savvy Social Crew, so you can find us by just searching on Facebook for Savvy Social Crew, or you can visit the website that I have redirecting to the Facebook page, which is savvysocialcrew.com. So every Friday inside of the group, I do a live Q&A session or mini training series. I also have prompts and questions every day to give you the support you need to create an awesome social media strategy. And yes, it is free. So join us, Savvy Social Crew. You can find us by going to savvysocialcrew.com. Now, Rachel and I are going to talk all about branding. So listen into this episode for tips on branding your social media profiles. We're going to talk about what makes a good logo. We're going to also talk about the types of files you need to get from your designer and take notes because it's super important. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about how to see if your ideal company name is taken or if it's available even. So let's dive right in. Hi, Rachel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you because you are a branding expert and you know how make the things look pretty online.
Yeah.
So can you, let's just dive right in. So we're talking about, social media. That's what this podcast is all about. Can you give us a place to start when we're creating our branding elements, whether it's images, whether it's voice, like where do we start when we're building out our social media brand?
Well, obviously the first place you want to start is the logo. All the profile pics that are there, you obviously want to make sure that that is clear, not fuzzy. It's funny because I actually just had a client who had me redo their logo because they didn't have the actual vector files or anything. And they had a very long and narrow logo. And they put that into their profile picture. And I talked to my contact. I'm like, we got to create a portrait logo for you because this is not, you can't even see the name of the company in this small little circle on Facebook. So I created a more portrait version for her, more vertical. So that way, and she got it back. She's like, oh my gosh, you can actually see what company we are. We're not just like this small little line of some red and yellow.
Right.
Yeah, it helps to have something, big in that kind of shape so that you have that there and people can actually see who you are. So that's definitely the first. And then there's, lots of other different things that people can do. Obviously the cover pictures and the bigger graphics that happen on the tops of your profiles. You want to make sure that those are also branded, whether it be, some great photos of your product or your company. It could even be some great, headshots of the leaders of your company. Or even just a big color block with something, your mission statement, your, a funny little quote about, what you guys do or what kind of products you sell to people, what kind of demographic you serve. So it's really just kind of continuing that logo look and the company and feel and your company vibe on those larger graphics.
Right.
So it's definitely the first place.
Okay, so let's talk about the logo. What makes a good logo? Like, how do we know when we're looking for a logo designer? How do we know what a good logo design is? And specifically for social media, how do we know whatever logo we've got, how do we know if that translates into a social media profile picture or something we can use on the cover photo?
Okay, yes, great question, because this is definitely something I think a lot of people don't know to look for. It's one of those things like, oh, I wish I would have known. Um, so the first part, what makes a great logo? Obviously, it's whatever is successfully speaking to what you are, what your business is, or what you are personally, depending on the type of company that you have. Um, you want to make sure it has, like, I always tell people, it doesn't matter if your favorite color is orange. If you are a company that orange doesn't make any sense to have that within your logo, if you're an apple orchard company, maybe not orange. Maybe you could kind of be cheeky about it, maybe, but you want to make sure that it makes sense to what you're doing, what your brand is, what you're selling. And then, of course, fonts and typography play to the type of feeling that you want to give. If you have a very high-end, you sell very high-end ornaments, or some kind of home decoration. Mm-hmm. You don't necessarily want something super edgy or modern or retro. You want something that has a little more of the nostalgic feel to it, very traditional maybe. I mean, it doesn't have to be traditional, but in that kind of style that you want to do, you want to make sure that your typography also reflects that type of style of the people that you're trying to serve, and the type of product that you're creating.
Right.
So then once you get past all of the actual aesthetics and graphics of what your logo is, this is where the rubber meets the road with a good designer. So a good logo branding designer would provide you not only just, a JPEG of your logo, but they should provide you JPEG, PDF, a PNG, which is a PNG, which has a transparent background so that you can put your logo on, dark colored backgrounds if you need to create some kind of event or something, flyer where you want to have a dark background. But also you want to make sure that you have an EPS, which it's the outlined version of your logo that you can give to designers like me who might be creating more print marketing materials for you, or you want to have package because you have a product and you need to have your logo on there. Those are the types of files that creatives would need. We don't really necessarily need the JPEG. I mean, it's great if we have it, but if we have that, we have limitations to how we can use that logo. So a good designer will provide you multiple formats. They would then provide you, if you decide, and really whether you have a portrait logo or a landscape type logo, that's kind of based on how the design process goes. Sometimes it just, because of the wording or because of a tagline that might need to go in there, it makes sense for a more horizontal logo, or it might make sense for a more vertical logo. But either way, your logo designer should give you the opposite of what, you don't have. If you decide to go with a horizontal, you need to make sure that you have a portrait version as well, because you would need that then for social media and anywhere where the format is more square. So, and then the last thing that they really should give you, at the very minimum, they really should give you kind of like a cheat sheet brand guide. If you're not going to go for the full brand guide, where it kind of really goes through all of the nuts and bolts of how your logo is, spacing, how it needs to be portrayed on literature and online. If you don't go the full brand guide, they should probably at least give you like a little cheat sheet. That's what I always do with my clients. I make sure that they know what the fonts were used, what fonts we ended up choosing for the logo. I give them all of the different color formats. So when you have color in your logo, you want to make sure you know the PMS, if that's what was chosen. A Pantone matching system is what PMS stands for. So you want to make sure that you know the Pantone color, the CMYK version of it, and the RGB version of it, which can also give you the web color or the hex color. So there should be at least 4 different makeups of the colors that are used in your logo. That way, when you go on to do anything else with any of your branding materials, designers in the future will know, okay, I need to use this red, because you don't want your brand to be confused with a cherry red when it's really more of a maroon red. So having those colors and the font choices, that makes designers in the future creating things for you much easier.
Whoa. Okay. I love it. I'm taking notes. No. This is awesome, because I feel like so many of us business owners get caught up in the aspect of just having the logo that we can post as a Facebook profile picture. And there's so much more that we need. Some of the things that I heard you say where we need different versions, like the JPEG, the PNG, the EPS or ESP.
EPS.
EPS. We
Yes.
also need our designers to give us multiple versions, whether it's landscape or horizontal. We need a cheat sheet, a brand guide that has the fonts that we use, the colors that we use. There's so much there that makes hiring an expert really worth it, because it's not just that one version of the logo one time. There's so much that goes into this. I love that you went into all of that, because I'm taking notes that I'm going to put in the show notes so that everybody knows exactly what to look for when they're hiring a logo designer.
Absolutely. That's what makes a good logo brand designer, is they'll be able to provide you all that information. Because if they don't, like you said, all you have is a JPEG. And then when someone says, well, I really need a background, or your logo without a background, to put on this wonderful, beautiful invite that has this, wonderful gold and blue background or whatever, they can't do it. They're going to have to recreate the logo for you, which is just going to jack up your price to create that piece. So.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's so true. I want to go back to something that you said. You talked about the initial design process and how, if you're an apple or orchard, sorry, you probably shouldn't have orange. Or, certain fonts speak to the style of your brand and the feeling that you want people to have when they look at your logo. So what are some of the questions that business owners should ask themselves, or some of the things that they should tell their designer to make sure that those logos capture their vision?
Right. Very, very good question. Yes. So probably some of the first things the creative, the logo designer really need to understand is they need to do a little bit of research, a little bit of discovery. People like to think that logos are a couple $100 and it's no big deal. It's a little point and click because I just want this circle and I have this letter. And it's just not that simple, or at least it shouldn't be. If you really truly want a brand, an actual brand that's really going to stand the test of time, now that's just not enough information. So the designer really should dive into, okay, so who are you? What's your competitors like? What do you produce? What's different about your company? All of those, just general discovery questions so that the designer can get to know your company. So that designer should definitely be asking those questions. And then from there, what they tend to do then, or what I certainly would be doing, is going out and researching. I research their competitors. I research the industry that they're in to understand what's already out there, what types of styles and feelings that are out there, because we don't really want to look like them, because obviously you want to, stand out on your own, but you still kind of need to look like you belong in the industry, so that people can, if they look at your brand as opposed to other brands, they say, oh, wait, this is a little different, but I can still relate. I still understand that they're a baby company or that they're an apple orchard. So for people going out looking for designers, those are the types of questions that they should have, answers that they should have prepared for the designer, because if they hire that good designer, they're going to be asking those questions just to get to know them. And it's so important to have that initial discovery session. Again, that obviously that's part of the project process. And I think a lot of people may not realize how much time that should be, like a good half an hour conversation. So again, that designer really understands where this company is coming from, what types of, likes and dislikes the company has, or you have, again, depending on who you're actually branding. You just have to be really careful, really careful not to put, unless it's if it's your company, if it's all about who you are personally, and that's what you're selling, you can have your own personal likes and dislikes as far as colors and fonts and shapes and that kind of thing. But if you are branding a company that is producing a product or a service, sometimes you have to put those personal likes and dislikes aside and say, okay, again, I know my favorite color is orange, but I really need to make sure that it's the right color or the right font or the right look for my company.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so important to just take that time, because a lot of us want to just dive into building the business, and we got to have good foundations in order for that business to be a long lasting brand.
Exactly. Because you don't want it to go out of trend. You don't want to be tired of it in 6 months or a year. You don't be like, oh, I look at that and I'm like, oh, why did I do that color? You want to make sure it's going to last. And as far as the phases and the process, I mean, what I do personally is I have my branding is kind of broken up into like three different sections. The first section is that discovery and that research kind of phase, and then there's the actual design phase, where kind of an ideation phase, where I just kind of pull a bunch of different things, different colors or palettes or shapes or things that I think represent what this company is about, and then within that, it's kind of a split phase. It's an ideation, and then I actually create the versions. And then, of course, the final phase is tweaking and producing all of the different file formats and cheat sheet, the guide, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so good. I love that because it's just important to go through the whole process, not take any shortcuts. This is definitely not an area where you want a shortcut.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we have our guide now, we have our logo, our cover photos, everything is set up. How do we take those branding elements and create social media graphics that relate to our brand? Like, do you have any tips for our listeners that would help them kind of translate what their designer has given them into something that they can use as a social media post?
Okay, that's a good question. I think the first thing, especially when you're creating graphics and things for posts, obviously you can do photos and that type of thing, which, you can pull those obviously from lots of different sources. And those don't have to be branded, obviously, with any color scheme or anything like that. But if you're trying to, put out a message or put out, hey, we're having an open house, for a new home builder, let's say, most likely, hopefully you're kind of working both sides in tandem, both social media and, say, print marketing or some type of, distribution of print material of some sort. But at that point, if you do have something like that, you can certainly call on the designer. They can, take PDFs or screenshots of the actual printed pieces and give that to you. And then you can kind of help post with that. Or if you haven't started with that, or you're not even to that scale where you're actually doing print pieces and you're just kind of focusing online, it's really, again, about kind of just using your brand colors. Even if of course, at that point too, you also should have a website, social media and website and all that kind of stuff up and running. So if there are certain graphics within your website, you can certainly pull those illustrations or graphs that make sense to the content that you're, pulling from. There's lots of really great stock photography sites out there that some of them, you have to have a subscription to, but some of them are kind of like a pay as you go, like $50 and you get 5 images. Obviously Canva, everybody knows pretty much about Canva. Everybody loves Canva. Great tool. It's funny because there's a lot of designers but like, Canva, I just, that's just cutting me out of the loop. And it's not. It's so not. It's a great tool for people who just need to put some stuff out on their social media channels, a quick, funny quote, a way to get somebody involved in something that they're doing, an open house or whatever. As long as you're kind of using those brand colors and maybe pulling from a couple things from your website, then you're staying with on brand. It's when you start pulling stuff from, 80s clip art, you don't want to do that.
Wow. I know. I'm trying to figure out like 80s clip art. That's going way back.
That's way back.
Yeah. Old school. But I love Canva, and you're right. It's not really a direct competition to designers because people like me who are using Canva are not designers. And when we do something complicated, we go to our designers.
Exactly right. Yep. That's exactly right.
Oh my gosh. I love that. So what final tips do you have for new businesses, when they're starting out to help get their identity, their voice, their brand? What's something that you can kind of close us off with and help us point us in the right direction for getting a nice brand online and on social media?
Yeah. So I would say that the one thing I think a lot of my customers come to me with is that they really don't know where to start. They have a business vision, they have a plan, and they have an idea maybe for some logos because that's sometimes for a lot of people that's an exciting thing to look into. You start Googling all different kinds of companies and logos to find different things that you like, which is wonderful for us to see, for designers to see kind of where they're thinking. It helps that research in the beginning. But, they just, other than that, they don't really know where to go. They don't know how to name their company. They don't know where to go to check to see if it's, something that they are allowed to have. Maybe another company might have it. So there's a couple different steps that people can go through to kind of figure out those very beginning steps. Obviously you want to make sure that you create a company and a name that isn't already out there. And there's a couple places I can point people to. There's a trademark, a U.S. trademark site that people can go to, and you can actually type your name in and find out if some other company has already registered that name. And if they have, then you can click on them and see if it's a live or a dead record, which basically means, if it's dead, then potentially you can still use it. But if it's live and it's exactly what you want to name your company, then you got to find another name.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to have to get that link from you and put it in the show notes, because that's a really good resource for people just starting out.
Exactly. Yes. So once they've kind of established that, the name, and they've got their domain name and all that kind of stuff, and they've got their logo, really, as far as getting on social media, and that's what's been so amazing over the last 10 or 15 years with social media, is that you can get on quicker with social media and creating your website probably quicker than you can create a lot of your print materials, at this point. And especially, obviously, if you're pretty much primarily online, then, you jump right in. But actually, we were kind of talking earlier about this ebook that I've created. And part of that is I used to say, okay, after your logo, you need to make sure you get your stationery. I know a lot of people don't do letterhead anymore, but sometimes you still need it for legal purposes or, for official letters or whatnot. So you still look like a business. But after you get that logo and you dive into your business card and maybe some stationery, then you do some flyers and that kind of stuff, and maybe your website all in tandem. Well, now it's like, once you get your logo, get online, get out there, get your profile set up on Facebook or Pinterest or Instagram, wherever you're going to be. Get your business pages set up, your logo on, start posting, type of content that your viewers want to see. And it's hard too when you're just starting out and you have no following. I have a client actually right now. I branded their Facebook page and their Pinterest page, and got a bunch of different boards, set up for them, and branded the boards, because that was the start of their branding. We weren't doing flyers and brochures yet. So this was the aesthetic that we were creating right on social media. So you can absolutely jump right on board with getting that done in tandem of getting your business card done and trade show graphics, if that's down the line, packaging. It's super easy. Just get your logo up there and start posting.
Oh, I love that. So you talked about the guide. Tell us what it is, and I'll put a link in the description so that everybody can download it.
Yeah, so it's about a 13-page document that basically it's kind of a workbook / informational book. So it starts out with those couple different research pages where you kind of go through and you ask the questions about, you answer those questions about what kind of company you want to be, what do you want your customers to associate with your company, those types of questions. And then the next page then is about the dislikes and likes visually that you feel are going to be best for your company. And then it dives into a lot of the things that we talked about today, where, how do you decide what a good logo is? What should you expect from a designer? How much should you expect to pay to get, a custom made logo? And then it also goes through social media, how to brand yourself on social media, how to provide consistency across the social media channels that you're on, and then how to do the, check your naming and all that kind of stuff, naming and all that. And then it also goes through the print materials too, like what types of print materials would you need right away, and what types of materials maybe could be down the line. And the biggest things for print materials is really just make sure you have a business card. Obviously, I know people have probably heard it, but if you have a business, whether it's online or not, you have to have a business card, because while your logo is the very first visual graphic of your company, your business card starts to set the tone of your style and aesthetic, which then gets put onto social media and your website and all of your print materials. So you definitely want to, after your logo, you need to bite the bullet, get a designer to do a nice little business card for you and get that printed, because then that just that helps every other creative that you work with. It helps them immensely be consistent on your brand. So that book will be out very soon on my website. You can get that for free. It's just like I said, a 13-page ebook, but it's kind of got some worksheets in there as well.
Ooh, it sounds juicy. I'm going to download it myself, and I'm sure our listeners will want it as well. So I'll put the link to that in the description once it is available. Thanks so much, Rachel. Where can we find you online?
You can find me at rscreativeanddesign.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll put the links to that and everything else that we talked about in this episode in the show notes. So happy to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Savvy Social Podcast. Now, if you want to chat more with Rachel, she's actually hanging out in our Facebook group at the Savvy Social Crew. So search for us on Facebook by searching Savvy Social Crew. We'd love to have you in there to continue the conversation. And as always, if you love the show, please give us a rating or a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this podcast. That really helps out the show and really helps us connect with more business owners and individuals who want to learn more about social media, just like you. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.